lately? It's coons. What have y'all done for us lately? And if there's no answer, the only thing we owe them.
Welcome everyone. Let's talk too. And tonight is Tuesday night, and every Tuesday night we have our sister Azima here, our elder, and we have been having a discussion, you guys, in reference to the road to Jekyll Island, the secret meeting that took place on Jekyll Island, where what we come to know as the Federal Reserve Act came into play, and known as what we know now as the Federal Reserve. And we've been having this discussion of who they are, what influence they hold, even to this day, because it's happened in 1910, 1913, and how it affects us when a body that literally has nothing to do with our federal government, but has this word Federal Reserve. Now, it has nothing to do with us, but everything to do with us. And the control and how they're able to use fear and interest rates to affect us. And understanding, like Sister Azima always reminds me, when you look at the last 40 years, when at one time there was no such thing as credit. And now if you guys get credit cards, you'll see how the interest on those credit cards that you have are extremely high. They're not low, and they're not getting any lower. And how you're affected because you're getting something of value with no value on the other end, holds no weight. And for us melanated folks, it appears that it has been hard for us to able to navigate our finances, understand what goes what, and so much so that I had a conversation earlier today where me and a coworker were talking about the difference between an asset and a liability. Basically, we were talking about a house and a car, and how a car loses its value. We were about his house. The house is worth about $3 million. The guy came out of his house and he had a car that was worth about $6,000. So he was surprised, and I said, "No, I'm not surprised." I said, "His investment, his money is tied up in that, because that's going to have value over that." So much so that anybody that knows, anybody that ever dealt with financing and banks, know that you better buy your home before you decide to take out a car loan, because the car loan can prevent you from getting that house loan. But anyway, this is our wrap-up show on discussing Jekyll Island, cause, effects, and consequences. And Sister Azima has some information that we're going to wrap up with. You guys in the chat have questions you want to ask Sister Azima regarding Jekyll Island. Please feel free to do so. Guys, intermingle with us in the chat. It allows Sister Azima's thinking cap to, be working. Conversation with you as well, and might get her to remember some things that may be of some. Sister Azima, what's going on?
Yeah, well, let's do a brief overview. That island has been there for more than 35,000 years. There were 35,000 people that lived on it. They were called the Gully. Guale. Of course, they took the land from them, the settlers, the wealthy settlers, and they began to use it for their own personal needs, which was some type of they took the island so that they could be able to move there and be separated from most of the people in Georgia because they were the wealthiest of the people. Along with that came the influence of England wanting to have control and knowing that they needed to have a central bank system somewhere in the Americas. And of course, Senator Aldrich was part of that process, along with the Rockefellers and a couple of other important people, Morgan, and you know. So that is not my friend unless it's productive. Okay. So the bottom line is that how were they going to do that? It was a secret meeting because there were quite a few wealthy people. Hershey's was one. Kellogg was another. And they didn't really want to include those individuals in there because part of their process is that they wanted to give back to the community, and that's not what they were about. Not all of them had the same love for the Queen of England or having a central bank system. Many of them had fought to be sure that we kept our own treasury because we did have a treasury. It was part of the three legs of government. And by having a treasury, it will allow us to coin money. There's nothing in there that said print. That came later. So as we know, in 1879, the very beginning of this area, after they got rid of the Gali people there with smallpox and then sending them inland to be enslaved or overseas for enslavement, many of them died out. And so this allowed them to take over the island steadily. So in 1858, they brought slave ships in. And of course, 400 of these people began to walk this trail called the Memory Trail. With the wealthy people there, they needed to be sure that they had a way. No, they didn't want to be sure. They were pretty much stoked on the idea of having the Federal Reserve Bank written into law. It was a lame duck Congress. I told you that's where you don't have your full Congress there, not all of your senators, not all of your House of Representatives members, because they were on vacation for Christmas. And this is how they were able to meet, came up with a plan to introduce the Federal Reserve System, which will allow you to have a central bank that's privately held in what state? The state of Delaware. It wasn't in Washington, D.C. The Treasury Department is in Washington, D.C., but the Federal Reserve Bank, a privately held bank, was in Delaware. And what its purpose was to be the octopus or the arms to control banking across America. Remember when I told you that people were taking bills of lading, exchanging it for their solid gold or silver? Well, if you want to control something, you have to control the coin, and the coin was gold or silver. It was 99.9% gold and 89 to 98% silver. And so that had more value. People could buy goods and services that they wanted and still be able to have money left over. So they basically began to work with the weakest members of the House and the Senate, coerced them, bought them off, blackmailed them, or whatever. They knew that they couldn't get the majority vote, so what they did was that they asked them to make it into an act and allow them to keep the act on the books until they were able to get enough senators and everybody to ratify it. And that's where we are at this point. And that's why Trump and a lot of people are going back looking at the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a privately held bank. They never had to be accountable for anything. Now, what did they provide you? They provided you with paper money. We were under the gold. We were under the Gold Act through Kennedy, Johnson. We got around to Carter, started coming up on Nixon, and slowly but surely they began to chisel that away. Especially when they got to Reagan, it was totally gone. So now you had nothing to back the greenbacks, which is what they settled on. Before then, it was all bills of lading, yellow, pink, orange, green, whatever color that particular trust company used, because every trust company wanted a different color so you be able to recognize, oh, this is William Trust, oh, that's Fox Trust. And you could look at the bill of lading by the color and you would know, and by the size. And so um, they wanted to unify that, and we went to greenbacks. Now, greenbacks didn't come into existence until right after World War One. Prior to that, money was white on white paper with slaves on it. And I'm sure most of your banks, they have a library, your major banks, not your credit unions, but your major banks. You can go to them and go through their library and see the history of money. And you'll see that first monies that were printed were on white backed paper, and they had slaves on them. And the bigger the slave, the higher the denomination. The more pregnant the female slave was, the greater the denomination. And the purpose of this was to have this money backed by the gold. And that's where they began to go around to the houses, starting in 1913 with the Stamp Act. Prior to that, they created the Federal Reserve System. And the Federal Reserve Act came into place in 1910 with J.P. Morgan and the Jekyll Island group, which was totally disbanded by 1947 when the state of Georgia took Jekyll Island over and made it into a state park. Okay, up until that time, many of those wealthy people that had come together were living on that island. Now, when you go back and look at the historical records, they're going to say the crash of 1933 made them leave. But if you already have a banking system in place, you're placing bets on both sides of the table, for and against. So you didn't lose any money. And that is how those people were able to maintain their wealth. They bet across the table. The wealthiest people will put money out over here to help the the poor and downtrodden while they're over here investing in military warfare. And so they never lose any money because they're on both sides of the fence.
So let me ask you, Tazim,
Mhm.
with that, knowing how the depression, knowing how when we're in a recession, minor depression, and knowing how these people are able to control and to control the market where people say the market is crashing, and they're going to come out winners on no matter what, because they govern how, whether it goes up or down.
Yeah.
How
Hmm.
why
Now what?
are why is our approach, because they're not part of our government, why is our approach like not allowing us to police them, or basically saying we don't want to deal with you?
Okay, you're asking why isn't the United States government's approach to, they can't govern Disney. They can't govern Boeing. They can't govern your airlines. They can govern certain policies, but they can't govern each individual airline because that's a private entity, a private industry. The financial part of that was a private group of people who made a promise to the Queen of England to have a central bank in America. We didn't ratify that, but we did ratify an act, the Federal Reserve Act. The strong arm of that act was the alcohol, tobacco, and firearm people until they began to create what we call the Internal Revenue Service. But the strong arm was the ATF. And the first people they went after were folks in the very rural areas of each state, because those are the ones that escape you. They know all the back roads, the hills, the caves. You went in there to get them because you're going to make an example out of them. And you made an example out of them by saying, look, they're creating moonshine and they're using your gold and silver. It was propaganda. And of course, those at the top, they know how to do that. And then you must understand that the majority, contrary to what many people think, the majority of American people, American citizens, white citizens, were immigrants. They were illiterate. They were not stupid, they were illiterate. They couldn't read, they couldn't write, they didn't even know English. They had to learn the American language. And then many of them went to school in their later years, 40, 45, 50, to at least know how to read the English language.
Mm.
So when you have ignorant people, no, illiterate people coming to your, who are illiterate of your language, coming into your country, you can pretty much ride roughshod on them because they are scared. They don't want to be shipped back to their country. They're fleeing atrocities, slums, severe poverty. Remember, I told you that many white people lived in abject poverty. Okay, abject poverty. America was the land of the free for them, an opportunity to believe in a lot of things. So when they got here, those people who were already here and settled knew the language, worked their way up to be captains of ships, top ranking military people, putting themselves in governmental seats. They needed a following, they needed constituents so they can promise these people a lot of things and know that they're not going to live up to their promise unless it's going to benefit them. And so it was very easy to do all of those things. And that's just how they looked at it. And this is my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. This was the thing that made me very upset with white people in general. Because one thing I've learned about my people, if we're going into another situation, into another country, we're going to try our best to learn your language, learn something about your culture, okay? So that we can either blend in or work with you. They didn't. They moved into enclaves. They created enclaves. They came into areas where the white wealthy who already had a particular agenda would allow them to come into the areas where we had already built schools and churches and homes and all that kind of stuff, give it to them by creating tension between people of color, melanated skinned people, and white immigrants. The most recent one was, well, recent for us, was the situation in California. Right on the heels of World War II, America allowed many Asiatic people to come in, and they would not allow them to go into the working middle class white neighborhoods. They would tell them, you can open your business on the fringes of where Black people live. And then you created tension between them by making sure the Asians had loans, okay? Not telling the Black folks that the interest rates on the loans were exorbitant, okay? And then having your Black politicians create animosity by telling the Black folks, see, they ain't got, the Asians got your job like they do now. The Mexicans got your job. The so-and-so got your job, okay? And it wasn't hard to do that because we had just come, slavery was very, very recent. We were on the heels of civil rights. So we were not that far removed from being considered property. Chattel anything means property. So we were not that far from being removed from what we consider chattel slavery.
Mm.
And so with these emotions, we were working out of a place of emotion, and including the white immigrants, they were working out of a place of emotion. And the methodology was divide and conquer. That is why it was a secret meeting on Jekyll Island. Everybody on Jekyll Island was not all white, all wealthy people, whether they were white or melanated skinned or whatever, they were not all invited because not all of them had the same agenda. And the
Yeah.
main agenda was being able to allow a central bank and develop a very personal relationship with the monarchy of England. So that if you wanted something, you could cleave to her and she could put pressure on who? Your presidents, and get certain things done for you. So that's why it was very easy to do that. We laugh about it because you all are more removed from it than I am. I'm in my 70s. I remember my grandfather being a slave. Okay, he talked about it. And I remember his sisters were slaves until they were 115 when they passed. And he passed when he was 100. So it was fresh in our, it's not fresh to you because you haven't seen it. Now, what's fresh to you are things like uh, Sandra Blaine being killed, you know, Mike Brown, Castile, those are fresh to you. And that's still within the system, the same type of situation. You are considered an animal. So therefore, we treat animals poorly. We work them to death. And they worked the white guys who were coal miners to death. They literally worked them to death.
Yeah,
Because
I actually, I'm in the
make
area. I'm in the
right.
area where a lot of people have black lungs. A lot
But
of
I
the people, grandparents have black lungs and so forth.
right. And they weren't going to pay for that. And they knew that. Okay. And white people were guinea pigs. They were doing lobotomies on them if they saw that. They were doing things to these wealthy people's children. It was trying and horrific times. And so when you have a lot of dissension going on and you have a focus, you're focused and directed on achieving a particular goal, that is when a lot of these laws came into effect because you were able to create animosity and you built it into your system systemically at every level of the playing field, in education, in medicine. Don't forget the Tuskegee experiment. Okay. And before then, any type of gynecological discoveries that we have or techniques that we use, you practice them on enslaved women. They didn't have a choice. Okay. Any type of thing that you did when it came to burns and, uh, you know, major things that destroyed your body, you did it to the black man. They didn't have a choice as a slave. And so what's built on our backs is a certain thing, but you can always erase that when you have enough ignorant white people who won't stand for anything. They work in a pack. And so they didn't stand for anything. They would stand if you were Italian, because I'm gonna stand with my Italian people, I'm gonna stand with my Irish people, I'm gonna stand with that. But they would not stand against the injustice that they would see with us because they watched other white people turn a blind eye. So this was very easy for the Jekyll Island people to do what they would do. That's why they did not invite all of the wealthy white people. because that meant they wouldn't get their agenda or objective done.
So, so let's see. Let me ask you, with the information that you provided, and knowing this, and then knowing where you are in your life, and then the middle-aged people, and then the younger people, how when they come across this type of research, or they come across this type of information, how are they supposed to, as we would say, move about? What would you suggest that they how they move about?
When, okay, maybe I'm not understanding what you're really asking.
If I was a person that never heard of Jekyll Island prior to listening to this conversation, you gave me the wow moment the last few weeks, and I didn't know anything about the credit and all this stuff.
Hmm.
How am I? What would you suggest how I go about with knowing this information and understanding how to deal with banks? Number one,
Hmm.
why our people historically,
Hmm.
our ancestors didn't deal with banks
Hmm.
and the fear of banks, and how, like, our money don't really mean, paper money don't mean anything anymore. It's
Well, right now you have I'm not applauding or lauding Donald Trump, but when he has these, not State of the Union addresses, when he has his morning briefings or he has his press conferences, and he's saying things like, we can't have so and so pal, over such and such aspect of the bank. The current president, let me just do this right. The current president is strategic. He put Nesser, I think that's the man's name, Nesser, into the position over the Treasury Department. Why? This man is a hedge fund expert, and he's worked with the private bank we known as the Federal Reserve Bank, or known, it's really called the Bank of Delaware. So he's worked with him. Okay. He is also an LBGT male. He has a husband. So that cleared a lot of things. But what you have to do is listen to this man talk. And he'll be the first one when he has his press briefing. And you can't miss him because he's like 6'5", 6'6", tall white gentleman, mingled gray hair. Sometimes he puts glasses on, and other times he doesn't. When he speaks, he tells you exactly what's going on. And he breaks it down for the layman to understand. Or you can go and look at the bills that Trump has put out there dealing with the Internal Revenue Service, and you can read those bills. And it's written in layman's term. Oh, they'll have this subsection, this, that, and the other. But off to the side, they'll start explaining what it means. Why is this important to you? Because you're getting ready to go to Bitcoin. And for me, when I went out there first time with Bitcoin and began to understand, I didn't know what blockchain was, and then Bitcoin didn't have blockchain, but eventually it did. What I began to realize was that I could end up in a situation, and this is no throwing shade or anything. I could end up with money that would remind me of pesos or yen, where I would have to have hundreds of millions of pesos to equal $200,000. I would have to have millions of pesos to do that. Okay. Bitcoin was kind of working on that because it's not one to one. But Trump is going to make it one to one using the natural resources that we have here in America, which we were sending overseas, which I didn't understand. Okay. And the fact that we still have active gold mines and active silver mines in America. And so your Bitcoin would be tied to the value of gold and silver, which does not change. It doesn't fluctuate. When I feel like it, I'm having a bad day, I'm PMS, and boom, we're going to knock the market down. It doesn't fluctuate because gold and silver was introduced to the world by who? Mansa Musa. He traveled the world with it. So much so that he was able to bankrupt other countries around him. He had so much gold. And he didn't take the gold back, he left it so that everybody that he came and did business with could trade with him in gold. You want to stand on the backs of your politicians and say, I want my money to be backed by gold, silver, um, gas, oil, okay, precious gems, or other solid technology, not technology, other solid minerals, ores in which we can trade with other countries when the paper money or bitcoins have no value because not everybody's doing Bitcoin.
This generation really understands how, because you come from the era where the money was backed by a natural resource.
Yes, yes.
Do you think this generation really understands the difference and why we should be running back to having our money back to a natural resource? You think that this generation truly understands it?
No, because listen to what they tell you. They say things like the economy is going to collapse. What are you going to do? You better go to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is digital money. Can you touch it? I'm asking a question. Can you?
No,
If I need to buy a house, can I buy a house with it right now?
no.
Can I buy a car? Can I buy food?
All you could do is trade with somebody.
Trade with somebody that has it. Okay. And I know he's laughing because it sounds funny, but there was a time you could touch your money. You can't touch credit.
Mm.
You buy using, even I do. I use a debit card to buy. I don't use a credit card. What's the interest rate on credit? Some of it is 27, others is up to 32%.
Yeah.
That means that's money that has not been created yet. And if you need to read that. There's a whole lot. Read your state laws. I read my state laws for interest rates. Okay. Remember the last time we talked about interest rates and I was giving you some tidbits that you could pay your house off in 10 to 15 years if you make that extra payment. Don't ever,
What?
never let somebody tell you to put that money on the interest. You put that money on the principal, the actual value of the house, or
You hear that?
you can do that with your car, the actual value of the car. You can pay down the principal, which eliminates the interest.
Make an extra
How you
payment if
pay
you
that, huh?
explain to it. Say it. Explain to the people in the chat again exactly what you said to do.
When you're buying a house and they come and tell you, you got your house, they're going to try to make you pay for that house in 30 years. You don't need to pay for that house in 30 years. You can pay it off in 10 to 15 years. Okay? How you get an extra pay cycle every year. You get a 13th month of making money. You don't realize it. Some months have 3 pay cycles, 5 weeks in them. Some months only have 4. But you get 4 months out of the year that have 3 pay periods or 5 weeks. You can take that money and make a payment on the principal, the actual cost of the house, not with the interest. You went out and you saw the house. Man, this house is great. It's 75,000. Oh, this is wonderful. Me, I can make this house payment. It's $130,000. That's the actual price of the house. That's excluding insurance, mortgage tax, and all this other stuff, and the interest rate. You can take that extra payment. Let's say your house payment is basically $500, and then all the other things that you add on top of it will add another 500. Now you're paying $1,000. But if you get that extra payment a year, you can take that house payment of $500 and send it to your mortgage company and say, this is for the principal only. Now you knock that principal down. Let's say you did it twice a year and gave them an extra 1,000, and you've been paying whatever you've been paying all year long, right? You paid your 12,000, gave them an extra 1,000. That's 13,000. That 12,000 that you gave them, 80% of it is for interest. Only 20% goes on the actual principal. I'm going to repeat that. 80% of that payment that you make goes on interest. 20% goes on your house. So when you make that extra payment, when you gather up those months where you have that third pay cycle and you get paid, take that paycheck, pay down on the principal, on your car, your house, whatever it is that you're owing on. When you pay that down, it changes. So now you no longer owe 134,000, you owe 132,000. Okay. They have to go in and recalculate the interest on 132. You say you do it again for 5 years, you've been doing that, and you've knocked off $10,000. Now they have to recalculate the interest on 124,000. It also means that when you're making your monthly payments, because they're recalculating the interest, you'll end up getting to a place where 50% of your payment will go on your mortgage, and the other 50% will go on their interest.
So over the period of time, you guys, instead of them saying it's a 30-year mortgage with the interest for 30 years, it would be a 15-year mortgage because the interest cannot be calculated for 30 years. It calculated for 15 because you got the principal all the way down to how it should be calculated to 15 years.
Right.
It sounds complicated, but when you think about it, Sister Azima explained how really when you look at the months and you understand there's 4 weeks in each month, that would only mean we have 48 weeks in a year.
Correct. But you have 52 in a year, which means you have an extra month. And if you remember that rhyme, what does that rhyme? It says 30 days have September, April, June, and November. Okay. All the rest have 31. So there's only a few months that have 30 days, and the rest of them have 31, which means it averages out to you all coming up with 3 pay cycles in some of those months.
And most people, the people that get paid every other week, you may not notice it, but for a person that gets paid every week, you'll see that twice in a year, getting 5 checks.
You get 5 checks. Now think about that. You know about it. You know why I know you about it? Because you want to go to Bermuda, to the Bahamas, St. Croix. And oh, girl, I'm going to get that extra check in March. I'm going to hold that to the side. Well, do the same thing for your house. I'm going to hold that check to the side and pay my house down. Because you know what happens? You pay your house off in half the time. In half the time. Because they have to recalculate the interest. Remember, when they calculated on you, it was for 30 years, just like if your car. That's why when you go in and you buy a car, you can negotiate and say, okay, so if I prepay the principal on this car, then the interest has to come off. And that's why we're not going to do that.
You may even get the loan officer calling you to say to you, oh, I see why you've been doing these extra payments. You sure you don't want to refinance?
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't.
So it's imperative that when you write it on your money order and or check, once you put that, they have to honor it. this money goes straight to the principal.
Right. Now, understand this is all part of the central bank system because how do you make money? You keep people in debt. How do you keep them in debt? You have them working. You removed you remove the rules and regulations or the safety net that the dollar has to have a value. When the dollar had value, inflation was always 1 to 2%. It was never 15%, 12%, 8.5%. It didn't fluctuate like that. Okay. And when you build a system that allows you to have a bank, now get this, the Federal Reserve Bank, the Bank of Delaware, had the right to charge the Treasury Department for printing paper money to give to them. They charged them, and they charged very handsomely.
And this is why you guys, I know a lot of people think that our president is a little off. This is why they took the penny out of circulation because it costs 3 cents to make 1 cent.
So is that practical? When you go to the store and you can't buy the same product, Tide or whatever, and you have to go and buy the store brand, which probably works better than the brand, the labeled, okay, the national brand. And you realize, oh, I don't have to use that. This works better. You have found a way to budget accordingly. You can budget accordingly. Credit is not an asset. It keeps you tied to a monetary system that fluctuates. Now, listen to what they're telling people now. Inflation is high because of Trump's tariffs. Inflation is high. I was buying products from Walmart, Amazon, Wayfair that were coming from China because that's how America ended up being a consumer country. Trump is trying to make us more of an industrial country instead of just a consume country. And I would have to pay $19. How is credit an asset when your house costs 400,000? Please explain that to me. So just explain it to me. Type it because I don't understand. I'm not trying to be funny. I don't understand because credit's not tangible. So how is it an asset? But anyway, I still had to pay tariffs on the products that I bought from overseas, sometimes as much as $59.99. I'm not paying that now for a lot of products. And in the great Midwest right now, our gas is $2.70 in the cities, and in the rural areas, it's almost $2.
I think that one of the issues, Sister Azim, and even that when you explain the issue of tariffs and getting people to understand that we have become in your lifetime.
Hmm.
You've seen where we were an industrial powerhouse.
Hmm.
Now we become a consumer powerhouse, and we even technology we're behind.
Hmm.
And how because of, and I'll say what I think, because of NAFTA, that dumbass deal that Obama put us in,
Hmm.
we literally built up the economy of China. China did not have a great economy 30 years ago.
Hmm.
And because China making cheap American companies going over to China to basically use slave labor.
They had no choice.
Yeah.
They had no choice. I want everybody to understand that. Your big companies and corporations were forced to go to China, and they lost their shirts because they didn't speak the language, they didn't know the culture. The Chinese weren't interested in doing a handshake agreement with them. They lost more than they gained. And when they came back and began to complain, it was like, oh, well, you know,
Black
it's,
Laren,
you
I'm gonna
know,
put you up there. Sister Azima gonna get you for this one.
it helped to acquire property and bet against the future. That's hedging. That's not credit. That's hedging. Okay. When you're betting against the future, you are hedging. That's what a hedge account does. It bets against the future. Okay. And the thing is that you have acquired the property, but you haven't paid for it. You've acquired only the name through a deed. Anybody, I can go out and acquire your property through a quick claim deed, and it just means I have my name on it. But you are the one reliable for everything else that goes on with the property, and you have to be
Rosine,
careful with that. Yes.
better answer his question, right? Because I
Uh-huh.
could see he may be going with the question is getting him to understand that, yeah, you may think that the credit is allowing you to do certain things that's technically not yours, but the credit is used on your name and
Yes.
how your name is part of the corporation. Explain that to him because that
Okay.
may be a better understanding.
Okay. So what's happening is that when you have credit, you are saying that I am going to be liable or responsible for this debt. Okay. You have acquired that property through credit. You will pay down on that, but that property, when you're buying property like that, even if it's residential, it's considered a commercial process. So your taxes on that property are going to be higher than Miss So and so next door because she's living in it. You are owning the property to do whatever you need to do with it and not living in it. The taxes are going to be higher. You're going to be held accountable for other things that go on in that area. Also, the city or town or state that you're in has to redress that area. Where you see apartment complexes next to residential areas, those are apartment complexes pay what we call commercial tax, even though they're in a residential area. So you're going to be liable for a different type of situation. And if you don't have a good public accountant that can stay on top of everything that you're doing, it becomes a problem. And I know what you're talking about because I've been to many of those real estate programs and they sell you this concept. But until you apply it, because I had to apply it, it's a whole different animal. And I
Right.
don't know if you had a chance to apply it. You can
Right.
get a lot of property using credit, but best know you are now moving out of being an individual and becoming a corporation. So now you need an LLC to protect the properties that you have. You can't put all of your properties into that one LLC. You're going to have multiple ones. And you're going to have a way to only hold that property for less than 5 years and sell it. And you need to upgrade that property so that you can sell it off in 5 years. That 5 years means that you must earn that money, pay off your debt, okay, to whoever the creditor is, and then move forward with the next plan. Because I used to be out here, I used to bust what they call busk. I'd be out here, I was bird dogging, hunting for property, getting property, flipping it, selling it. I did everything except going and rehab it. And I didn't want to do rehabbing because I saw my cousins do it. And I was like, that's not what I'm interested in. But I was able to get property bought and sold, used many of those techniques, and realized I can only hold the property 5 years. And at the end
Right.
of the 5 years, I had to get rid of it
One
because
of
then the interest on it changes. It changes dramatically.
the things, Black Larry, and I know that live down in you presently live down in Atlanta, right? Um, I'll give you an example that you'll probably really understand, Black Larry, is the rapper Rick Ross. Everybody knows about his house and all this stuff
Hmm.
and how he don't pay for landscape because he wants to save money. But also what a lot of people don't understand is that he has livestock on his land.
Hmm.
So his land is technically a farm.
Yes.
And that's the way he's able to avoid
Extra
certain taxes
tax.
that will be
Right.
going on his land.
Right.
So that's one of the things, it's not illegal. You just have to, when you live in rural areas like where you live, I know Atlanta's not more rural than it used to be, but when you live in rural areas, you see it. I see it every day. I be
Mm-hmm.
like, this person only got one cow,
Mm-hmm.
but they have it for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Or when it comes to taxes, stuff like that, when it comes to owning your home and making your home an asset.
Mm-hmm.
Your home should be an asset,
Okay, and
not
here's one other thing. The only people who could absolutely own the land are the indigenous people we call American Indian. They're the only ones. Okay. You can only lease the land in which you built your property on for 99 years. I learned that the hard way too. You can only lease your land. So everybody that's bought a house, they think they own the land. Nope. Nope. You own the house on the land for 99 years. And
this is
that's how cities and states can come in and do eminent domain because you do not own the land. The people that own the land are the indigenous population, the melanated skinned people we call Native American or American Indian. They're the only ones that own all this land
what
here in
happens
the United States of America.
when you hear Rob uh, DeSantis talk about property tax.
Mhm.
This is what's going to happen when he ever tries to say we shouldn't pay property tax. Definitely in Florida and other states, because he does not understand that those taxes is how the reservation gets their money. Because the indigenous people of the land got to get paid.
Right. So you have to understand that when these guys left Jekyll Island, they did their research. They had to go back through all of the laws and treaties. And what they do is that they give you the illusion. It's an illusion of these things. Credit is a bill of lading that you have to pay off daily until it reaches its promissory note period. That could be in 5 years, 3 years, 30 years, 100 years. Okay. And what you're paying off is the principal plus the interest, money that has not been created or printed yet. And what does that do to you? It strangleholds you. Okay. Whether you realize it or not. And I know they're doing all this flipping and all this other kind of stuff with property. But understand this, if you get into a real legal battle, you will lose because they can tell you in the end, that's your house. You paid it off, but you have to get it off my land. Now what you gonna do? You got to find somebody to dig it up and move it. And they're only going to take all of the upper floors. They're not taking the basement because the basement is in the land. And that's what they do. The system is built to make sure that only those that were the wealthiest and helped write and formulate these laws, these rules and regulations and policies benefit from it. And Trump is telling you every single day, read it, learn it, apply it, okay? So that we don't get caught up. Because if you've never been out there bird dogging, and if you've never had to do a deal, and all these things, these lease options and all that kind of stuff, know that what you're basically doing in a very polite way is that we're really, with credit, we're stealing the product of other people's hard work because we haven't really paid for it yet. And you can reverse the payments on it. We need our reparations ASAP. Okay, we can, people, well, I don't know if you all know, but there are times when you piss somebody off, they'll go and call their credit company. I'm not paying for that. I didn't do that. And
I
then
have,
you get chargebacks.
I have a
Charge
friend that I have a friend that he used to work for a credit collector, and he left working for the credit collector, and now that's his. Oh, he has his own business. He runs his business out of his house. He does all the cold calling from his house. And I know this is not the conversation for, but you guys would be amazed how much money this guy makes by just being a bill collector, credit collector, and understanding what goes on and when what he pays for your debt and what you give him when he calls you. I know some people avoid those calls, but it's amazing how he gets your phone number, gets all your information, is able to threaten you with a lien and all this other stuff. And the reality is that he can't enforce nothing.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Credit is not real. That's why I always tell you, be careful with that because they'll have you believing people can reverse payments on their credit card. Okay? They do it all the time. And you have to understand the law. The law clearly states that a third party person that has taken on your debt does not have the right to come after you for that debt because you didn't take the debt out with them. You took the debt out with ABC Furniture Company and they got tired of you and they sold it to JFK Collection Company and JFK is trying to collect on you and they don't have the power to do it. It's not the law. Just like the IRS doesn't have the power to come and take your stuff. But what they did was that they made you believe that they had the power through coercion because they used other branches of the government, particularly the alcohol, tobacco, and firearm guys, which were patrons to whoever they owed their allegiance to. And they were gun hungry and happy to shoot at people. And they'd come out and take your stuff, bust down your doors. And then what? You all are from the age of where people were breaking in, the police were swatting your houses. Now stuff happens and the police are going to jail. Doesn't look good for them, does it? But that's because they were under the false pretense of certain laws. And Trump is telling everybody, read the Constitution so you can learn what is right and what is incorrect. And debt is incorrect. That means when you die, you leave a debt to your children. If you have children. At one time, states were collecting death taxes.
They still do.
Some states, Missouri got rid of it, thank God, but some states still do. So when you die, there are taxes you have to pay.
I think New Jersey's 33%.
Oh my God. Well, Missouri's is zero now. But yeah, there are states out here that will collect a death tax on you. And they will take your assets and sell them off to pay off your debtors. And they can take your commercial property from you. Your reparations is knowing that you don't have to be a part of a system that is corrupt. It's a corrupt system. And how can I put it? It's a system that leans towards those that are out for personal gain. That's the type of system it is.
Capitalism, baby.
And so that's, when they left Jekyll Island, because it was taken over by the state of Georgia in 1947. In 1954, they became members of the Bilderberg. Now you got to learn about the Bilderberger group. And they gave you UNESCO and NATO and a whole bunch of other things. The Bilderberger group didn't want European countries to be angry with America. Isn't that interesting? And where is this place? At the Bilderberg Hotel in Sweden. Okay. And Rockefeller has attended. Kennedy hasn't. And Trump, to my knowledge, hasn't, because I've been out here researching it. But you had a lot of politicians, academians, scientists. They were all there. They were able to speak and give their views. You could take the information if you were a member, but you had to be invited to be a member. And then from there, you were able to disperse this information you've learned among your people or your peers. And if it fit the agenda that your country or state or whatever was interested in, you would move forward on it. You would know how to act upon it and see in what direction you need to go. And that's why it kept America involved in war all over the world.
Mm.
So
So, guys,
remember, Jekyll Island started in 1879. It ended itself and people moved off. The houses are still there. They turned them into museums, you know. You can go walk through them. In 1947. Okay, and now it's considered a heritage site by 1978. Isn't that amazing? Okay, but out of that came the Federal Reserve System and the Federal Reserve Act in 1910, and it was brought into fruition by Samuel Stamp in 1913, and they used the alcohol, tobacco, firearm people to coerce folks to give up their gold and silver. It didn't happen all at once. It took about 10 years to get the gold and silver, and they gave them bills of lading or greenbacks. And it clearly stated on the old greenbacks that you could take that money in for the face value and receive gold or silver for the face value of those dollars. And those dollar bills were called certificates of gold. A certificate dollar of gold, a certificate dollar of silver. Now it just says Federal Reserve note. What is a note? It's an IOU. I owe you money, but you ain't gonna get it.
so all we're doing is trading notes.
That's it. Bills of lading.
So,
And
you
then
guys,
stepped up from that and went to credit. And what is credit?
we hope that we were able to give you guys an introductory or a little bit about what Jekyll Island means in the grand scheme of things, what the how it affects our everyday life. And remember, if a system was born in secret, can it ever truly serve the people?
No, it doesn't. No. It only serves those that created it.
Sister Azima, do you have any final words, final thoughts? What are you going to turn the page on next week?
I
Do you
don't
have
know.
any
Right
ideas?
now, I'm too busy looking at my people in space. I'm too
Uh,
worried about that.
we might we might have an interesting topic next week that we're going to go into. I know we've been discussing basic Constitution, the two constitutions, one to Jekyll Island. It would be interesting for us to probably study and talk about both civil rights acts and how who has benefited from both civil rights acts and you know where this DEI thing is at now. Getting to understand how certain powers that be continue to try to make us the face of DEI, and DEI has nothing to do with us. But anyway, maybe we'll discuss that, or maybe I'll get Sister Azima to talk about the Anunnaki. We
Or I'm
shall
going to
see.
talk about fascism because we're at that place. You already know what's going on with the Constitution. You do know how certain groups have come together. And now we're going to talk about isms. And we're going to find out what the definition of isms are. Fascism, Hinduism, all of that. And then see the system that you're under right now, it fits right into that. Okay, because it goes against what we call natural laws, natural things. It's never about peace. Isms are never about peace.
All right, Black Laren, I'm gonna ask you this question. Put it up here for
Did you see the Charlie Kirk funeral? No, I did not. No, it was like Nazi Germany, and it should be because those were the Ashkenazi Jews. What do you know about Turning Point, the company that Charlie created while he and Candace Owens were working together? And the reason they got rid of him was because of Netanyahu. Because something happened, Charlie had an epiphany, and he began. I'm sorry, and he began to realize that he needed to really question what was going on with Israel and the Hamas. And everything was leading him to believe that Netanyahu, Bibi, was not the good guy. And he asked Bibi 3 times to come and talk to him on his show or allow him to go there. And what they told him is that he was being summoned by Bibi and he didn't go to Israel because he felt like he would not have come back.
With that, we're going to close out the show for tonight.
Closed. Thank you for the question.
We might talk about the creation of Israel. Take care. Have a great night.